solid as a rock. One of the next things I want to do is work out a way to mount this Pelican case style top box to the back of the Himalayan. The stock rack is pretty weak from what I've heard, tends to bend and snap. Not really planning on carrying a whole heap of gear in the top box, but it needs to be strong. Also, when the top box is on and the panniers are on, the indicators where they are located aren't particularly visible, so I want to work out a way of getting them out here a bit more visible, and I think probably the brake light as well. So I've just taken those off, taken the rack off. We've got some good mounting points under the back seat there, and where the mount bolts on at the side here. Just drawn out a bit of a grid on the bottom of the Pelican case. That'll just help me to get it centered and looking right, although not much on the Himalayan seems to be particularly square. I've just marked out the existing rack shape straight down onto my bench here, and I'll then be able to use those marks and those holes as a bit of a guide as to how my frame's going to be set up. I've marked the position of the closest bar to the rear of the seat just by using a square down to the bench there, and just marked a line straight down onto my workbench. Just measuring the distance there between the two mounting points under the pillion seat, and we've got about 275 millimeters. And if I learnt anything from my days at NASA, half of that is 137.5. So I've just put a little mark there. Just going to mark that centre line. Just going to use a carpenter's square to get the angle of the rear seat frame here and here. And the way we do that is using this little pivot point here. So what we can do is pop that right on the corner, rotate until we line up with the line that I'd marked, and when we get that right, we're looking at about 15 degrees. Just check that on the other side as well. Yep, we're good on the line there, and 15 degrees. So currently the top of the frame there is at about 115 millimeters higher than the bolts under the seat. Just also measuring down to the plate under the seat that the current rack bolts down to. We've got about 90 millimeters there. So I'm looking at about a 45 mil lower profile, which will be nice. Yeah, fairly solid construction. My idea is to have an aluminium plate on the rack, and that'll be tapered roughly along those lines, and that will engage with some of this Z cleat on the bottom of the top box. It'll sit roughly like that, so that you'll be able to just drop this down onto the aluminium, slide it forwards, and then I'll utilise this little window lock on the back here to engage into the aluminium plate and lock it in place. The rack is going to be made out of this 20mm square tube. It's about a 1.6mm wall thickness, and I'll cut and bend that to form the new rack. So what I want here is the aluminium plate to sit down, or for the top box, sorry, to be able to sit down on the aluminium plate between the two cleats before I start sliding it on, just so that you're not kind of fiddling around with the box, trying to line it up, you know, pushing it end on. So that'll determine to some degree the angle that my cleats are going to be at as well. So what I need to work out is what that distance there is, and then that will be the distance, the maximum distance between the inside of the cleats at this end. It looks about good there, and then up at this end here we can read the angle off of that. So we've got 1, 2, 2.5, so it's nearly 3 degrees. So I've just transferred those 3 and a bit degrees, or sorry, 2.5 degree angles onto the cleats, just by doing the same sort of method, using the soft jaws on the aluminium so I don't mark it. Just going to gently round these internal corners so they don't catch on anything. I'm just going to clean up the test piece of aluminium that I've got there for the plate, then mark that out. Just going to clean that up by hitting it with the orbital sander. So about 95. I'll just draw a centre line square off that. Just spun that plate around. The depth of the box is 270mm, so I'm just going to mark that. And at that point there, we need the box to be about 200, or the plate to be 217. So half of that is going to be 108.5. Unfortunately I just miss it by a fraction out on these corners here. I can work with that somehow. theory is that you'll be able to rest it down on the back there like that to line it up. And just slide it on like that. So I've just marked out 20mm from each end and then split that into thirds. There's always one. Righto, so setting out the steel work, just drawn a couple of lines projecting the pleats up on both sides and then square across the back there. That measures at 185, and then at the front, or sorry, at the back here we've got 155. So there are two measurements for the frame. What I'm hoping to do is to do a cut that'll look, my pen here, it'll look something like this. So I'll cut out a section here like that, and then this will roll around this radius here and give me a nice rounded corner on the back. So we're just got to draw that out properly and work out these dimensions. The calculation for this is, well, the circumference of a circle is 2 pi times its radius, but this is only 1/4 of the circumference that we need. So we do 2 pi times the radius, divide by 4. So this is a 20mm piece of steel. So we've got 2 pi times r equals 125.6. Divide that by 4 is 31.4. Don't know about you, but I'm not that accurate with a angle grinder, so I rounded that to 31, and that gives you the dimension around here. So this corner here will end up mating there. So I've come 31.4, yeah, 31mm further on that way, and it came down at 90 degrees, but this angle's not 90 degrees, it's 2.5 degrees off that, so I think it'll end up being a little bit shorter than that. So I'm going to cut it a bit of an angle there to start with, and I can always take a little bit more material off, you know, and you're going to fill it up with a weld anyway, so shouldn't be too bad. We'll cut that out and give it a crack. not real keen on the way this lock is right on the radius of the bottom of the box there, so I'm going to make up a plate that'll house the lock. Brother-in-law's tigged a little bit of extra alley on the end here and filled up all the holes for me. Thanks, Stu. That's going to allow the locking tab to get in to the right position now that it pushes in a little bit deeper than I thought it might. Pushes it into about there, so that fits quite nicely. So I'm just going to mark out where the frame's going to sit. Just trying to replicate this joint here. What I've done is cut out a section out of a big bolt, and then I've got some 16mm bar. I'm just going to try and replicate that angle there. Good buddy. So a lot of backwards and forwards, trying to get the right sort of position of these supports that are in the original position of the Himalayan rack. Yeah, backwards and forwards to the grinder and the bike, and I think I've got it about where I want it. Would have liked to get these two angles paired up, but it's just not quite going to work. So what I want to do now is just get a little tack on the back side of these supports here and here, just so that everything will be held in the right position, and then we'll take it over to the workbench and weld up the support to the rack. So I've just soaked some towels in water, and I'll position those over all the delicate parts and then just hit it with the welder. Before I start welding the supports onto the frame, just wanted to sort out how I'm attaching the this joint to the bike. What I've decided to do is use a nut like this, enlarge that hole so that the head will go through. I extended these bars about 150mm underneath, just to give that some rigidity, and yeah, welded those inside and out along both sides, and then did a lot of grinding because I'm a shit welder. So I'm 6'5" and 130 kilos. Pretty happy with that. Oh, hang on, no, not 6'5". no, 5'9" and 75 kilos. I always get those confused. Looking pretty solid. Sticks out a long way, out the back a long way, but function over form in this case. Just doing a little weight comparison with the old rack and the new rack. Call it 1410. The new one is heavier for sure. This is without the alley plate on, obviously, so 1980. The alley plate's another 800 grams, so almost twice the weight. So the yellow is the tail. Brake, brake, brake. Good, good. So white is brake, yellow is tail. So yellow to red, white to blue. Completed the wiring loom. Now for the new tail light on the back. Worked out pretty good, I think. Just put a little bit of padding on the rack between the rack and the aluminium plate that goes on here, just to give it a bit of suspension. And I'm just going to bolt that on now. Just going to give all the bolts a little dab of Loctite. It's only going to a very thin bit of metal. Hopefully that'll be alright. If not, I'll redo it with some insert nuts, rivet nuts. Little rubber feet on there, a bit rubby being on the workbench. So yeah, it sits on there quite easily, slides forward nicely like that. The window lock needs a little bit of a jiggle just to get it in the right spot. And it is locked. Not going anywhere. Solid as a rock. Happy with that. Good height to get into. Closing comments, pretty happy with the box that I've chosen. It's nice and sturdy, and with the little feet on the bottom there, the cleats don't get in the way when it's flat on a table. It's not going to scratch anything. The window lock, yeah, a little bit concerned about dust and stuff getting in the top and jamming that up, so I might have to see if I can come up with some little plug or something that'll go over that. Works well on the bike though. Excuse the nakedness of the bike. The gearbox issue that I've had, which you might have seen in the previous video, means that the engine's out and spread all over the desk again. But the little light that I've got on the back here, I think it was just an eBay special. It was about 40 bucks or something, I think, maybe even less than that. I think it's intended for a DRZ Suzuki. Anywho, the plate on top, yeah, it'll do me. Agricultural, but that's the way most of my things end up. The frame is pretty strong. I'm fairly happy with that. The countersunk bolts holding this down are only into the 1.6mm thick frame, which probably isn't ideal, but I'll see how it goes with a few little off-road ventures, and then if it's problematic I could put some nut certs into the frame to make that work a bit better, but I'd have to reposition these holes because I didn't really get them central in the frame when I screwed them in. With this design, getting it on and off is super easy. It sits on the back edge there. You know, there's no kind of hassle lining it up at all. It slides forward, the window lock engages, and it's there, locked on, nice and tight. Happy with that. Window lock disengages, and off she comes, nice and easy.